Good evening, Bills fans. Welcome back to another edition of the Cover One Buffalo podcast. This is your post-game show. Just wrapped up the Bills Patriots Monday Night Football game, and I'm here with my good friend Greg Thompson. How are you tonight, man?
I'm here, I'm awake, and I'm glad to have my partner in crime back. Welcome back, man. Congratulations on a happy, healthy new family member, and excited to have you back.
Yeah, I'm excited to be back. This was one of the few shows I can do because right now everybody's sleeping. I think the infant might be up feeding throughout the show, but we won't hear him. And it was my only chance to get away and join you. And I missed you, man. But you've been doing a great job holding down the fort while I've been gone, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, we're ready. We're ready to have you back and be full force together.
Yeah, man. So, guys, it was a Monday Night Football game that I wasn't looking forward to all week long. I don't know how other fans felt, but I know they lost, and the way they lost with that pick six towards the end of the game obviously feels soul crushing, but I don't feel that upset after that game, man. Overall, where are you at Monday night? I think they held their own a little bit.
Yeah, anyone who is disappointed right now had massively unrealistic expectations of this game. I had the same dread that I think you and many others had of, come on, we're on national TV. Don't, lay an egg and embarrass us here. And they didn't. They held tough. We had the ball down 6 in the fourth quarter against the Patriots. We held the Patriots offense to one touchdown. We had a lot of really strong elements, and granted, it's going to end up looking like 25-6 on paper. But this was, I think someone tweeted, this is the closest 19-point loss in NFL history. Like it was right there. And that's not indicative of the performance that was on the field.
Yeah, well, I mean, the swing in emotions, but also the swing in the game. We think Kroom has the touchdown there late. You think it's going to be a 18-12 game, and 2 plays later, it's a 25-6 game. And that's just what the game was. It was actually a close game up until that interception. That one play really changes the scoreboard, but I don't think it changed the outcome of the game for me. I really thought, and not even joking around, that this could easily be a 45-10 or less football game for the Bills if Tom Brady came out and played the way that he usually does. But the defense, stood their own. I think there was plenty of times where they had their backs up to the wall, and it could have been that 45-10 game, but they held their own, man, and forced field goals and kept the game within reach until that interception.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the fact that it was as close as it was, and we didn't get any of the big plays. We'll get into some of them, but all of the big opportunities. Tremaine Edmonds, just missing that block, the flea flicker off of Clay's hands, the missed 2 huge missed plays to Zay Jones late on a fumbled snap, and then the strip sack fumble on Anderson. We had multiple huge opportunities and converted on none of them. And we're still in a position where it was either, again, 12-6 with the ball, or even after they did score, making it 18-12. That was a huge opportunity where we converted on virtually none of those. They had the turnover advantage, and we were still competitive in the game. So it was, everything that we could have asked for. If we get a couple of those lucky breaks going our way, we actually had an opportunity there to pull an upset, which not saying we deserved that per se, because our offense once again was historically bad and as bad as advertised, but we had an opportunity to steal that game in an ugly fashion.
Yeah, definitely in an ugly fashion. But I've been saying it for a while now. When you have a bad to mediocre team, really in the NFL, the talent still is so close that 6 to 8 plays can define the outcome of a game if your team's able to hang in. And they didn't have any of those plays go their way. They played, like you said, just ugly, gritty enough football to stay in the game. If they could have got 6 of those plays to bounce their way, I think that they're definitely more in that game. But yeah, the offense just historically bad, like you mentioned. And we'll get into that in a second here. I do want to remind everyone that's coming, if you're here for the first time, we are a podcast presented by cover1.net. If you don't know who cover1.net is, you got to get over there, check it out. It is your go-to spot for Bills analysis. We do a lot of other stuff as well when it comes to the draft analysis and things like that. But you're here for a Bills talk show. We are your primary source for Bills analysis. Eric Turner, who also writes for The Athletic, is the head honcho here at the site, and he just breaks down everything. And then you get to listen to Greg and I talk with our sweet voices here every Wednesday and Sunday after the game. Just a lot of content we've got going on. Greg, anything you want to say about Cover One and speak to the fans about what it is we do?
Yeah, I think it really, touches the whole gamut. We have awesome draft coverage. There is specific breakdown for teams. For premium members, I love the Slack channel. It's so much better than some of the social media outlets where you just have everyone screaming back and forth. You get a really focused discussion with invested, intelligent Bills fans. It's really worthwhile. I would encourage anyone to go on there. We actually might get some contests going to really encourage some additional members to jump on board, and just excited to have the opportunity to talk to more people who want to have intelligent dialogue about the Bills and not just, vent frustration all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that Slack channel is really one of the things that keeps me sane right now in this season during the games, just talking to other guys that are watching the game and feel the same way I do about the team, sharing tweets that we like, but not having to deal with Twitter. Last year, I was done. I couldn't do Twitter anymore during the games. It upset me. I was getting in arguments on Twitter. I said, you know what, this is making football unenjoyable for me. So I'm glad the Slack channel's there. And that's a nice premium benefit for us. Let's get right into this, man, because there isn't a whole lot of exciting things to talk about, especially on the offensive side of the ball, which is typically where we start in these conversations. Well, let's back up a little bit. Before we get into the offense defense, I want to hear about your gruntled or disgruntled. This is a new thing that we brought in, your brainchild, because you just want to say gruntled every week, at least once a week.
I think it's understandable.
Tell me who they are this week, because I had a little bit of trouble figuring out my disgruntled, even though as bad as they played, it was a team effort of playing poorly, especially on the offensive side of the ball. My gruntled was pretty easy, so I want to hear who yours were.
Well, there's a lot of frustration. I think people even clamoring to go back to Nathan Peterman. I'll get into in a moment, but I think it's fair to say Derek Anderson. I think that there were a lot of missed plays. There were botched snaps where Zay Jones was open for a deep pass. There were plays that I think he did okay, completing 22 passes, 290 yards, but, giving up that strip sack fumble, throwing a pick there on a critical play. I think he kept us in the game in many instances, but I think that was there. I think it's fair to talk to someone like Anderson, but I think you also have some concerns. LaShawn McCoy going 12 carries for 13 yards. He really did make some nice plays on the pass game with 6 catches for 82, but 13 yards and 12 carries just isn't going to get it done. So my disgruntled is going to go to a split between Derek Anderson and LaShawn McCoy.
That's fair. I don't know who out there thinks that starting Nathan Peterman is a good idea ever again in an NFL football game. I don't know that there's any logic behind that. Derek Anderson obviously is who he is. I mean, the guy was retired 4 weeks ago at this point, wasn't ready to come in and play football. That he got put in a predicament where he is playing football. We were kind of talking here before we went on live that Derek Anderson looks like he might have gotten seriously injured. So we might be forced to play Nathan Peterman again, whether we like it or not. But I don't think actually, and I was saying this in the Slack channel, I'm not sure that any of the Bills quarterbacks on the roster right now perform better than Derek Anderson did in this game. I think Belichick has a track record of really sticking it to rookie quarterbacks. Josh Allen maybe has the legs to make a few more plays athletically than Anderson could, but I don't know that he would be able to do much more with his arm with these receivers. The guys on the commentators, there weren't great commentators tonight, but one thing that they mentioned late in the game on one of those catches late that was meaningless, they said, if you watched all the Bills tape this year and even in this game, guys are blanketed almost on every throw. So I don't think it mattered if Josh Allen was out there or not. I don't think anyone would have played any better than Derek Anderson on this roster just by the limitations of the offense in itself.
Yeah, it's so hard to unravel where we have elements of, blocking. Is it the blocking that's letting pressure get to them? Is it bad throws that are not getting into the receivers? Is it receivers not creating separation to be available for the quarterback? And honestly, it's a little bit of all of it. I don't think it falls at any one particular player's feet. I don't think it's any one particular player's fault or even one position group. I think there are periods of time where the offensive line has been good. I think there are periods of time where Derek Anderson has been okay, and that and Josh Allen has played well. I think there are times where we've actually seen a flash from the receivers here or there. It's just that we don't get any consistency. There's no consistent separation. There's no consistent, movement for the offensive line. I think overall the run blocking has been very poor from the offensive line all year. They've actually done okay in some pass blocking, and then no matter what, we either have two incredibly poor NFL quarterbacks. People can debate Derek Anderson or Nathan Peterman all they want. The irrefutable part is they're both bad. I think that Derek Anderson is a material amount better than Nathan Peterman, but that's still really bad. And then Josh Allen, even for anyone who's optimistic and still feels like he has a great opportunity to develop into something, which I agree, I think he still does. He's obviously not there yet. He's still a very raw, very talented, but not ready rookie, and that's exactly where we're at. Is that our options are the worst quarterback in NFL history by many measures, a longtime journeyman backup, or a rookie who's not ready. None of those are great, and we're simply trying to make it through the season as well as possible to get to the future where we actually have some things pointed the right direction.
Yeah, and people did mention in the chat box, Zay Jones, as you mentioned earlier too, had a couple times where he was open and getting some separation. They did get him the ball some, and we'll get to Zay here in a second. But overall, the skill positions aren't helping any of those things that you just mentioned in your last comment here about where the quarterbacks are at. And I think that play at least could be elevated to where you're scoring 14 points a game, 14, 17 points a game, could be elevated with better skill positions, more guys separating, and things opening up downfield. There was a number of plays where they showed us the full angle, and I didn't see anybody open on a number of plays, and that's tough, specifically that interception. The terrible throw by Anderson, but really the only throw there was to throw it away because nobody was open, even for like a good one-on-one play. They just don't have those guys. KB did it once in the last 8 weeks. Other than that, they just don't have a guy that could go win in the one-on-one situation. So I don't totally blame the quarterbacks. It's just going to be like a year, and that's fine. My disgruntled, and it really only comes down to one play, but it's a play you got to make. And I know he was in there in backup duty, but Julian Stanford, you got to make that tackle on third down, man. You had him. I know White's a slippery dude, especially in open field. I get it. He's a good player. I think he's a super underrated player in this league. But missing that tackle, that drive was really the defining drive of the game. Whether or not the interception, the pick six occurs or not, that drive to score a touchdown was defining. And what defined that drive, outside of some of the missed calls that we'll talk about later, was that missed tackle.
Absolutely. And that was so rough with the defense playing so well and really, keeping us in that game over and over and over again. And to honestly, the first place Stanford came in, he actually made a tremendous run stop and got in there. But then to be in open space where you have a chance to get off the field and to let them, be able to convert there, which ends up, being the drive of their only touchdown and going through there, it was so backbreaking to get to that point. And, it took a lot of the steam out of what we had going, and it's tough to look beyond there. On the upside, I think we have the same gruntled. I think both of us saw some real promise out of Zay Jones. And I think that there were a couple plays you mentioned not seeing a lot of separation. I actually saw a couple tonight for the first time in a while where he genuinely created separation. The play where they got the turnover, where they got the ball on the punt return from Micah Hyde, had it at the 35. They called max protect and were taking a deep shot. They took Zay out of the left slot and they ran kind of a slant or a skinny post almost across the formation. The other receivers came on in routes and pulled the safeties up, and Zay had like 3 steps on their nickel corner. And that was absolutely the play they were calling. And if Anderson doesn't drop that fumble, that snap, he puts it there. And I think we have a touchdown. I think we take the lead 13-12. So being able to see that in the overall game that Zay put together and being able to, go pull in 6 of his 8 targets, 55 yards, several of those on critical third down conversions. This was easily Zay Jones' best game of his career in my mind.
Yeah, I am super happy with the development of Zay over the last month. I would say I've really seen a lot of development of him. Started a little bit slow, had that injury though this summer, so a slow start's expected. Quarterback play has been bad, but some of the things that I'm happy about, I think he's over the yips of year one. I think he's got his confidence back in his hands, which is huge. I think that's really all that happened to him last year is and it does happen to guys is something gets in your head and you overthink things and you get a case of the yips and before you know it you're one of the worst pass catchers in NFL history. He unlike his counterpart of his rookie class, Nathan Peterman, was able to bounce back from a historically bad performance. And he seems to have his confidence back, like you said, not only in the catching, but in his route running, his ability to get open. We were talking about in the Slack channel. Zay Jones is never going to be a fast guy that's going to break away speed downfield, but I think that he's got nice routes and they're getting better. And I do think he has good hands as a possession receiver. And that is a nice piece for the Bills. If he starts to pan out, maybe he doesn't live up to his trade up draft position, but if he can be a reliable target as a bigger possession guy, I think that's a win for the Bills who need as many people in the skill positions going into the next two seasons. If you can keep Zay Jones there, and we talk about it all the time, they have control of his contract here on a rookie deal. I mean, that's a huge win for the Sean McDermott regime here if he can become any type of player.
Absolutely. I think you've been very even and supportive of that, not necessarily just, being a crazy fan for Zay, but just saying, hey, he's not a bust. We don't know that yet. We're still waiting on being able to have, the possibility here. And now I'd actually think we can take that a step further. I think that now we can definitively say he is not a bust. I don't think we need to wait to confirm that. He is a legitimate NFL caliber wide receiver. He's, like you said, he's never going to be that stud number one, but I think he can be the number 3 modern big slot, your poor man's Larry Fitzgerald, big slot on a good offense, that I think he can definitely be a part of that. And he's someone now that I think we can plan on, as I say in each pod, my judgment is, will this guy matter on the 2020 Buffalo Bills? And Zay Jones will matter on the 2020 Buffalo Bills. He's going to be a piece of that, and he's one less piece we need to go out and find an upgrade for this offseason.
Exactly. And that's what excites me is going into the season, I was unsure if we needed to find 3 to 4 wide receivers in the offseason, which is a tall task. Now I think you can draft a guy, bring in a guy or two in free agency and have a really nice wide receiver room. And some of that's because you have at least one position filled with Zay Jones. And that's a really good position to be in. And hopefully somebody else in that room works out. So I'm glad we have the same gruntled because for me that was an easy one to pick here with Zay Jones. Even though the offense performed so poorly, he kind of highlighted the night for me. Let's get into sides of the ball here. All right, we'll start with the offense. We always do. We usually have a lot more to talk about at quarterback. I feel like we talked about all that there was to talk about here in the opening about what Derek Anderson did in this game. Was there anything else you wanted to kind of touch on at the quarterback position?
Not a lot. I mean, again, 22 of 39 for 290 yards isn't terrible. I made the comment in the Slack. I don't know that I think Nathan Peterman can go 22 of 39 for 290 yards.
Not with only one interception.
Yeah, correct. It's something that he's disappointing, but he is what he is. He is a limited veteran who understands NFL defenses, but just doesn't have the touch or the arm talent to be a difference maker, and is just supposed to be in the room helping to develop Josh Allen. So no, I think we kind of touched on what he is and what he's not.
Yeah, and I think the people around him, if you have a guy like that and you're hoping to have any type of actual success, which I don't think the Bills are. Brandon Beane was on here on the local channels with Joe Biscaglia. I think it's News 7 that Joe B works for. They did a little bit of interview. And while Brandon didn't come out and say specifically that they planned on losing this year, he mentioned, we were prepared to take our lumps. Which he did say to kind of maybe calm fans' nerves a little bit. They were hoping AJ McCarron worked out. The plan wasn't to start Josh Allen. It's all things we've all talked about, right? But I think ultimately, if you really thought that you were going to win with a guy like Derek Anderson, you need the skill position players that the LA Rams have. You're not going to do it with the skill position players that the Buffalo Bills have. You're going to have a tough time winning with any quarterback with the skill position players they have right now. But the Bills know that and prepared to take their lumps. Like you said, there was no I don't think a thought crossed their mind that Derek Anderson would be playing 2 weeks after they signed him. I think they really thought that this was just going to be tutelage for Josh Allen in the classroom, and now here we are. I guess while we're talking about quarterback, man, I don't know if I haven't had a chance to be on Twitter since the game. I don't know if anybody in the chat room has come out with any news about what they're saying about Anderson's injury. I'm guessing we're not going to find out till probably Tuesday, maybe tomorrow, or maybe tomorrow or Wednesday. We'll find out. But if that is serious and they only have Nathan Peterman, assuming Josh Allen isn't going to be ready to go, you and I have been talking that Josh Allen's comeback would probably be after the bye. It seems like we're trending towards that right now. Do you think, I guess two things. What do you think they do at quarterback? Do you think they're even willing to consider putting Nathan Peterman back out there? Do they force Josh Allen to come back before he's ready? I mean, that would be a pretty bad predicament if Anderson's hurt.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously our worst case scenario. So I just searched on Twitter. There are no immediate updates. So I will cross my fingers that we're going to have some Derek Anderson potential. But if we don't, let's assume that it was a shoulder separation. He certainly was kind of dangling his arm in that, manner. So hopefully it's not, but let's assume that he is and he's out. Obviously, you now run into the same situation we had before. I don't think you have the option of an alternative. You would immediately bring in quarterbacks for a workout tomorrow. They would work out, then you work on a contract. They'd at best be able to practice Wednesday. You're not bringing anyone in who you're going to have faith to start, who's only been in the building for 2 or 3. We're already on a short week, so on 2 days' notice. So if Derek Anderson's out, I'm assuming they're not going to change the timeline on Josh Allen and rush him back. So if he's legitimately healthy, that's great. He hasn't practiced yet, so I can't imagine that he's all of a sudden ready to do that. So if Derek Anderson's out, we have to prepare ourselves that we will start Nathan Peterman against Khalil Mack.
Sorry, I'm mentally processing what you just said to me. I'm going to be at the game, so I'm really hoping that that's not the case. And it's kind of sad that we're sitting here talking about that the worst case scenario for our team is Derek Anderson not playing. So it's quite an interesting year. I think you and I are clearly okay and along for the ride. I do hope that the game I go to is at least entertaining like this one was for a few quarters. I just want to be entertained in somewhere into the second half, and then we'll see what happens from there. But let's switch it up to some of the skill position players here a little bit, because one thing that I put out on Twitter immediately, actually, I think sometime in the fourth quarter, maybe after that interception, was I haven't been on the Bills should be sellers at the trade deadline kick that a lot of people have. Really, after that interception and the way that we weren't able to get the running game going in this game, I'm okay with selling everything. Anyone that isn't on a rookie deal or their name isn't Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer, I can't think of anyone else that I would say, you know what, we really have to keep this person. Keep all the guys on rookie deals, Hyde, Poyer. I'm cool with selling Shady and the other skill position guys. Where are you at after this game, man? This is weeks now of Shady being pretty much unproductive, except for some stuff in the receiving game.
Yeah, I'm certainly in the same boat. I know in the chat there's been a lot of comments on the reported Josina Anderson reported the contract offer to Terrell Pryor. I think that many people hope that maybe he can be signed and that maybe that contract offer was in place because they maybe have a deal in place for Kelvin Benjamin. I don't know if that's true, but I am now in more of a open mind to trading than I was before. I don't want to give anyone away other than maybe Kelvin Benjamin. I don't want to give away Shady, but if they get a legitimate offer, my line is a 4th-round pick. If they get a 4th-round pick, I'm in for trading LaShawn McCoy. I'm in for Kelvin Benjamin for literally anything. If they get a 6th-round pick, I'm in. There are multiple other players that I have a value for. One I would include in your group, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer are not available. I don't think Jerry Hughes is available to me. I think that he has 2 or 3 more good years in him, and I'd like to keep him around. He's under contract next year on a reasonable deal for as disruptive of a defensive end as what he is. So I would certainly like to see him brought back, but anyone else that people make a reasonable offer for, if we get an offer, if somehow he could sell Charles Clay, that would be amazing. If somehow he could sell Kelvin Benjamin, that would be amazing. If we have an offer made on just about any player, I think you have to listen. I don't anticipate the Bills to be buyers, but I don't think that's crazy. I think that if they have a chance to get someone with contracts through 2019 and or through 2020, I think that that's a possibility that you have to listen to. So I think that there's a couple things that we can watch for, and that I am now more open specifically to Shady than I was before, and think that now you have to be at least available to make those deals, and anything that we can get that will build towards the future, you have to be open to.
Yeah, I was in the camp the whole time of the only way I trade Shady is if it's an unrealistic deal and you can't say no to it. Second round, maybe early third round pick, then okay, sure, you do it. I've bumped back to a fourth. I'll take a fourth for Shady at this point. I want better for him, and at this point, they're not getting the production out of him that I thought that they would, that would help this offense at least limp along. Like we've said multiple times, looking like an historically bad offense. So if it's going to be that way with a 30-year-old back that isn't on a friendly contract moving forward, go ahead and part ways with them. Thanks for everything you've done here. It's not really anything getting Shady at the end of the day. It's just the state of where this team is at the moment, lack of production. I don't even think the lack of production is totally on him. But it's just not working out right now. Business is business. Give us a fourth round pick and he's all yours. So I'm kind of right there. I just don't know if any teams do it. Like I said, that deal's not great next year for a lot of teams. So you have to be a team that has a good situation to take that on and be willing to give up a fourth. I know people, toss around a fourth, but that's not nothing.
Correct. No, I mean, we've turned that into legitimate players, and that is anything that's a second day pick is a legitimate value. That's a second day pick. That's right there in that window. And that's something that we have to be able to get. If people are talking a fifth or a sixth, I know LaShawn McCoy's dancing and losing yards and some of those run plays is frustrating, but his value to this team and what he was our leading receiver today, 6 catches for 82 yards, being able to have that kind of offensive skill next year, he's under contract. We're going to eat some dead cap if we trade him anyways. So I'm not trading him just for anything if we don't have the right kind of offer.
Yeah, and all it does also, and I do want to stress this to Bills fans, it does create another hole to really have to plug next year when they're trying to plug some of the other holes that they have. So if you get rid of Shady, because Ivory's behind him, he's a 30-year-old running back. Marcus Murphy flashed in the preseason, but he hasn't done anything in the regular season, even on his opportunities really in special teams. So there's really nothing behind Shady that you can say, all right, well, we feel comfortable moving him for something outside of a fourth because we have this guy here that's going to take over the running back position, because they just don't have that. So definitely something to keep an eye on here in the next, what do we only got a couple hours left of trade deadline talk, right?
I think that we are officially at 16 hours.
Yeah. So
we have 16 hours until the trade deadline.
A lot of Twitter refreshing going to happen here over the next 16 hours. I know I'll probably be on there all day tomorrow. So wide receivers, we talked about Zay Jones a bunch. Kelvin Benjamin actually made quite a few plays, maybe 3 or 4 plays. Didn't really do anything that frustrated me. Didn't love that crackback block, but I understand it as a guy that's played football his whole life. The rule has changed.
Yeah, up until 6 months ago, that was a legal block.
Right.
They really just added that, and I understand that they call that a defenseless defender, and the defense certainly argues all the time that all the calls go for the offense. So I don't mind every once in a while getting a play where it's in the defense's favor, and that's tough when it's your team, and that's traditionally a relatively clean block. But their point in the NFL for safety purposes is that he could have come and simply walled him off, and it would have been just as effective from a play standpoint. He didn't need to blow him up and crush him there without looking. He could have simply come and basically set a screen, let him run into him, and he gets the exact same effect on Shady. And it doesn't make any difference. So that's what they're pushing for there. And it's tough when you see it that, hey, I got an opportunity to light this guy up. And I don't fault him for that, but that's what the NFL is going for.
Yeah, I wasn't super mad at it. I know some fans were. I'm not going to really get on him for laying that. Like you said, it's a new rule. You're in the moment. I understand. But yeah, nothing he did today really upset me. But I'm still selling on Kelvin Benjamin, even though he did go up and get that one pass. He had some nice moments, but he's just not the guy for the future, especially if they sign Terrell Pryor. Totally fine with moving on from KB for nothing. I mean, somebody can have
I brought it up in the chat earlier. It's very similar to my take on Derek Anderson. I think people want to be all or nothing. Kelvin Benjamin is not a great receiver. Kelvin Benjamin seems like a malcontent and a problem in the locker room, and he's someone that I don't necessarily want grooming my young receivers. Kelvin Benjamin's also our best wide receiver. And maybe Zay Jones is infringing on that now, and I'm more open to that. But, playing Andre Holmes or Cam Phillips isn't going to be fun. So if we sign Terrell Pryor, I'm much more open to that. But before, I think people all the time, we made the point in the offseason that, hey, Shady was already 32nd, or Tara Taylor was already 32nd in passing. It can't get worse. Well, it has. We've gone from bad to historically bad. So in that same vein, people who have a lot of frustration with the passing offense, and it's like, we're terrible. It can't get worse. Well, it can get worse. And I don't like Kelvin Benjamin, but he's also the same thing. I'm certainly not open to just releasing him. If we get any compensation for him, and especially if we can replace him with a Terrell Pryor signing, I am very open to that. But people need to understand that if we don't sign Terrell Pryor and we trade Kelvin Benjamin, the offense won't be better. The offense will be worse losing him.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. And I think you're mostly fine with that. I think a lot of fans would struggle with that if the offense gets much worse at this point. I'm totally cool with it. Let's do whatever we got to do to get to 2019 off season, whatever it takes. I'm there. But yeah, no, I think you're right. A guy that is really disappointing to me, though, even in the midst of this bad offense, because I really thought when Josh Allen was in there that he'd be relied upon, and then you bring in Derek Anderson, I thought that he would thrive with a veteran quarterback and find open spots in zones and things like that, is Charles Clay. And I saw the one play from him, and I mentioned in the Slack channel, I said, wow, Charles Clay's still on this team. I haven't seen the guy. He hasn't showed up. I don't hate him for the contract like a lot of people do, but he's definitely not even close to living up to what his contract is. And he's probably an untradeable asset just because his contract's kind of an albatross as far as there's no value to us trading him. He's not worth what the contract states for really any team. So he's probably on this team for a while. Do you think it's, we keep going back to chicken or the egg? Is it the quarterback play that's limiting Charles Clay, or is he just a guy? Is Charles Clay just a guy?
He is just a guy. Now, I've made the case multiple times that he is the biggest example of an unrealistic contract setting someone up for failure. So being in a position where he was never going to live up to that contract, he was still an NFL caliber tight end. I think he's now really right on that borderline. I mean, he makes a couple of blocks here or there, but he had a rough penalty earlier today. He's out there running routes and can make a play here or there, but he has some drops. He caught half of his targets, 3 of his 6 today. I'd be surprised if we saw him back next year, because we finally have our first out. And in my mind, he's barely NFL caliber. I think he has been the last couple of years. I actually think he was probably underrated for as much maligned as what he was. Now Star Lotulelei is going to take over that mantle of the much maligned, overpaid fan, disgruntlement. But I think we've now probably crossed over that barrier, and Charles Clay is probably right now borderline NFL caliber tight end. And now I feel much more strongly he probably won't be back next year.
Yeah, that's frustrating. We'll get over to the offensive line. I didn't really get to see a lot of either way. I felt like I left this game not really being able to tell what I saw out of the offensive line. I saw a number of times where the interior linemen just weren't able to get to the outside. Patriots are a really good gap integrity team. They're not going to get out of position to come and make a play on the ball. They're going to stay their gap. They're going to force you to make the play. And they showed that. So I don't know if the lack of the running game was necessarily just the offensive line didn't perform well, or if it's that the Patriots just were in their gaps and where they were supposed to be. They knew what we were going to be doing. The pulling bothered me. There's a couple of times I saw Bodine just struggling, laboring to get out on the edge, and that's not going to help you create any holes for LaShawn McCoy. What'd you see out of this offensive line? It looked like pass protection was okay for most of the night, but couldn't get anything going in the run game.
Yeah, I think that it's fair to say that the pass blocking was good until late in the game. Anytime you let an offense know that, hey, we're passing no matter what, you're going to get some pressure because they don't have to have any respect for the run game because they know you're passing, trying to scramble to come back. Almost all of our sacks were in that phase. The strip sack fumble that they got really hurt, but that was probably one of the few plays, and that was Deion Dawkins had left the field after our late play, couldn't get back on for the field goal, and then the first play back out on the next drive was that play. And I have to assume that he was still kind of struggling to be able to get back into his pass set, and that's why the defensive end was able to get around him, or the outside linebacker was able to get around him so well. So, I mean, besides a couple plays, like you said, Bodine flashed for the wrong reasons a few times. There were several of those plays that were not LaShawn McCoy's fault, where he simply got blown up on the defense. And, I know that there's not a ton of big names on the Patriots defense, but Trey Flowers is a stud.
Yeah, very
good. He ate our dude's lunch a couple times tonight. So that's a tough spot to be in, where you're expecting a guy to block someone who's talented like that. So I don't think it was the problem. But similar to my comments earlier, it's hard to separate how much is quarterback, how much is offensive line, how much is receivers not getting separation. And they all probably played a part in why we're such a poor offense.
Yeah, so let's flip it to the other side of the ball here, man, because I don't want to talk about these guys anymore. I'm sick of the offense. One thing I'm not sick of, and I can't wait to go back and watch over and over again, is this defense. I know a lot of people are upset and saying, well, we're wasting this good defense with such a bad offense this year, and this team could be so incredible if we just had a competent offense. And sure, maybe that's true. I don't think it's a waste to have this defense. They have so many young core guys locked up on this defense moving forward that I think a good performance now only builds a solid foundation for a good defense for the next 3 years or so as you have these guys under contract. So I'm happy with the defensive performance overall. And tonight, man, they really showed me a lot, especially times that bend but don't break in adversity, where teams of the past just allow Brady to do whatever he wants when they're in the bend but don't break. This team did not. They made a number of good plays, weren't able to get the turnovers that we've seen them get, but the Patriots don't make a lot of those mistakes. You're going to have a tough time forcing Tom Brady to make the bad throws that some of the other quarterbacks will make. And things just didn't bounce our way, but still the defense put out a super impressive performance there, and almost keeping the Patriots out of the end zone entirely in that game and holding them to field goals. You got to be excited, man, about this defense and the future of this defense.
Absolutely. I think my biggest fear was that the consistent lack of offensive production, the consistent skewed play snaps and time of possession was wearing on the defense, and that the Colts game was kind of the dam breaking. So seeing them show back up and put on such a phenomenal performance. We just held, Tom Brady offense to one offensive touchdown. That's a phenomenal performance. They held them to their first 4 scores were field goals, getting some pressure on Brady early. We got a couple hits early. They did struggle for the second, third quarter there for a while, not getting pressure and being able to let him kind of sit back there. And that was rough, but that was part of the defense. Our defense overall is going to be trying to confuse them, trying to confuse whoever the quarterback and coordinator are about which 4 of our guys are going to come. We're going to put 6, 7, 8 guys up at the line of scrimmage. You're not going to know who's coming. We're going to bring 4, drop 7, and then we're going to try to rally to the football and make tackles. And we did that over and over and over again. Now, we gave up yards, and Brady is always going to do that, but they rallied to the ball and we stopped them and held, not giving up a touchdown until the very end. That's a win in my book and a great performance.
Yeah, and all those things you mentioned, and then you have Trey White just locking somebody down for the most part in a game. Gordon had a couple catches. I don't know what his final stat line was, but I feel like I was really worried about Josh Gordon. But then I remembered, hey, we got Trey White, and he'll probably shadow him all night. Edelman got his, but I think that's okay. Like you said, he's going to get his yards, but if you keep him out of the end zone, I don't particularly care. If I'm going to nitpick a little bit about the defense outside of the touchdown drive, which I had some issues with the officiating on that drive because Milano was clearly held in front of an official on that Patterson run. Hogan somehow managed to get a yard and a half of separation, and it wasn't because he can stop on a dime. It's because he pushed off right in front of an official, puts the ball first and goal. So I'm a little bit mad at the officials there. Also, the Bills had a chance to intercept on that drive. So that drive was a kind of a kooky drive, ended up being really the drive of the game. But the thing that bothered me the most, if I'm nitpicking about this defense, is Tom Brady running for more than 7 yards to pick up a first down on a 3rd and 7. I didn't think the Bills would win this game. I didn't really get very upset about any moments of the game. A little disgusted at certain times, but I was fuming angry with Tom Brady rushing for a first down on 3rd and 7. And it ended up in a field goal, I think, on that drive. They ended up getting a field goal. Were you pretty pissed too when you saw that Tom Brady run? And then Trey White had a perfect opportunity to just light Tom Brady up, and he just hesitated, I guess, for a minute and just missed him. How do you whiff in that situation, Trey?
That was the part that got me. Was I understand that, a veteran quarterback is going to manipulate the pocket. And sometimes when you only bring 4 and it goes on for a while and the receivers pull away, you're going to have windows. You had those silly runs from Phillip Rivers and Peyton Manning and people who are not good athletes. So that kind of stuff happens every once in a while. What killed me was that Tre'Davious White, possibly the best athlete on our team, got juked by Tom Brady. Now, I know some people said they thought he was afraid of the hit, and I get the new rules, but you're allowed. He's a runner at that point. You're allowed to light him up.
Off on him.
And even then, don't go helmet to helmet on anybody anymore. That's just good, sound football. You could fold him in half and just crush him right in the stomach. And he got juked. He could have hit him right there for a 1 or 2 yard gain, not let him pick up the first down. And to let that happen was just infuriating. So
could have been.
I get it, but that part was terrible.
Could have been the Nate Clements GIF 2.0 from back when Tom Brady's rookie year, that GIF that everybody posts when he got hammered. One thing when I was looking at the stat line at that point that kind of surprised me was Edmonds was still the second leading tackler, and he missed the entire second half. So he was having a pretty decent game. He still gets caught up in the play action stuff a little bit. His athleticism, his eyes, he doesn't quite see everything, and he overbites on stuff. But overall, man, he is the real deal. There was on that same drive that I was talking about where Brady had the run for first down. He saw a swing pass, and he went flying to the ball, man. Honestly,
it was the exact opposite of your disgruntled.
Yes.
It was the exact play that Tremaine Edmonds blew up. He got hurt. Julian Stanford comes in, is a little bit late there, over pursues, and James White has the time to catch it, plant his foot, and cut back. Tremaine Edmonds is that split second faster and got there before James White could plant his foot and cut back, and he blows it up. I mean, that's literally
a beautiful
the difference.
sure tackle, gets him around the legs, rolls around the back of the legs. Like, he's just got something to him. It's those moments of watching him that make me totally stand by my crazy prediction of him being a generational type talent in 3 to 5 years in this league. And it makes me super excited about him. He did have that tip. I thought he was going to bring that one in. That's the kind of play that you have to get your hands on the ball in a game like this. But you know what? There's not a lot of guys that play middle linebacker that are 6'5" that can even get their fingers on the ball. So I think I'm being a little bit picky to say I want him to bring in that interception. Not a lot of guys can even get up and get that ball. One guy that I'm a little worried about from this game only, he's played 10 years younger than he looks, was Lorenzo Alexander. I felt like had a few plays in coverage specifically and setting the edge on runs that he just seemed a little slow tonight. I don't know if anyone else saw that or picked that up. And maybe when I go back and watch, I'll see some different things. But just from the first glance, I got frustrated with Zoe a few times, and that rarely happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to get frustrated on what we're getting from him, on his contract, on his contribution, in where that's coming, especially what he's giving in the locker room. But yeah, I mean, there's still limitations. There's still things that we want him specifically on rundowns or pass rushing. We don't want him isolated in coverage. And, the Patriots specialty is lining up matchups, getting guys isolated in one-on-one. And they exposed a couple people here or there. There was a couple times they got Edmonds, a couple times they got Zoe. They certainly went after Julian Stanford when he came in. But Lorenzo Alexander is good on my football team as long as he wants to play football.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
That man is, if he him, and Kyle Williams is a different story. Kyle Williams is, a lifelong, dyed in the wool Buffalo Bill. He's going to be right there on the Wall of Fame immediately. So I'm good if either of them think they can play again next year. They're good in my book. If they think they can play in 2020, I'm there and ready for it. I am very comfortable being 1 year too late instead of 1 year too early on both of them. I'm okay with them being too old on my football team because of what they bring in the locker room, what they bring in the film room, and that position room. And, right now they're still contributing. They're, we still are seeing major contributions from both of them. So I'm okay with both.
I somewhat agree. I do want an upgrade at the outside linebacker position going into next season. I'm okay with Zoe still being on the team and playing a major contributing role, but I definitely need an upgrade at that position, especially in coverage. I think that's
I don't even consider him a linebacker anymore.
Sure.
I think that having a cornerback 2 and a new legitimate, modern NFL outside linebacker that can cover, it has to be a top priority. We can always get younger defensive ends. I think we're actually pretty good at defensive tackle, but bring back Jordan Phillips. But, you get me a good NFL caliber outside linebacker, a good cornerback 2, and I'm all set. Everything else, we bring in Zoe, and he is now our third down specialist, and you give him the 30% of the snaps, I think he can still contribute.
Absolutely. That's where I'm at with him. But there wasn't a lot for me to look at this defense and say things I didn't like. That was really one of them. Julian Stanford's play, like you said, he got picked on a little bit by Edelman, showed why he's not a starter in this league, not just because Tremaine Edmonds isn't ahead of him. He just isn't there. But overall, I thought the defense played really well. Didn't get as much pressure on Brady in the second half as I would like. I don't know if you noticed where they still bring in some of the exotic looks into the second half. It seemed like they got a little bit more base at times throughout the second half and allowed Brady to kind of do his thing and then got into that bend but don't break.
Yeah, sadly, I kind of think Brady started to figure out our rhythm where we were posturing with the double A gap and then bringing one linebacker, but dropping one of the 4 defensive linemen. I started to pick up on that, so I'm sure Tom Brady did before I did. So over and over again, we would go up there, 4 defensive linemen. We would line up the 2 linebackers in the A gap. One of the linebackers would come, and then one of the defensive linemen would drop. And we did that like 5 out of 6, 7 out of 8, that kind of run where it was, really rough to be able to, get us into that kind of position. And I can't be mad. That's our defense. That is what it is. You can only be so creative with which 4 are coming out of the 6 or 7. We didn't see as many of the secondary blitzes that we have. I remember seeing one where we brought a corner off the edge where we brought 6 guys, I think, and it got picked up pretty well. But that's the only time I really saw a total overall blitz.
There was a blitz on it was a big third down. The one Jerry Hughes got pressure on Brady. Edelman drops the ball. It was a big third down late in the game. There was a safety blitz, I believe, on that play, but that safety didn't get any pressure. He was late on the blitz, didn't get any pressure, but I did see that come. The only reason it stood out to me is because you're right. I was expecting to see a little bit more Taron Johnson getting after Brady a little bit because he seems to have been successful in the blitz game. So I was hoping to see a little bit of that. Didn't get that. I think they dialed back the aggressiveness against Brady there in the second half, which I wanted to see a little bit more because as we know, they definitely held them to field goals, but the only way to really beat Brady and force turnovers is to get pressure on him. And they just didn't really do a lot of that. But it's really hard to knock this defense and the performance that they put out. The yards don't look good. The final score doesn't look good, but I don't think any of that's really on the defensive performance as a whole.
No way. They held their own. You're not going to hold any modern NFL offense to one touchdown. So let alone a Tom Brady offense to one touchdown. So they did their part and then some. I think everybody contributed. Philip Gaines was awesome tonight. Mm-hmm. That dude sticks his nose in there every single time. And tonight, I actually don't think I saw him go off the field holding his shoulder even once. And that's not something we've seen to this point. He normally goes in there and to his own detriment, lights himself up. And I think he was in there. That's another piece I feel really confident. I think we have our nickel corner for the next couple of years. His rookie contract is going to be a great window, and being able to have players like him, Trey White, Deion Dawkins on rookie contracts at critical positions is huge for that window to be able to use that free agency money.
Yeah, and you mentioned those late, if you can get those mid-round picks. I mean, he's one of those guys that they've been able to really hit on, a Matt Milano type of guy, where Matt Milano is a huge contributor on this team. He made a number of plays tonight that really solidified third downs, just like firing his gun and making plays. But yeah, Taron Johnson, he's a guy that during the draft process, when we drafted him and we did our post-draft show, I'm on here with Eric and I'm saying, you know what, man, I'm watching what I can for a tape of these guys, and I'm no scout like Eric is, but I'm looking at him saying, hey, man, this guy's from a small school. He didn't dominate a small school. He's got small arms. He doesn't have the frame that I like. I don't know what this pick is. I've never heard of this guy. I think this might be a bust of a pick without giving him a chance. And I couldn't be happier to be more wrong, because you're right. It's the kind of thing that now you don't have to worry about that. I thought, again, I love Trey White. I love the safeties. I thought going into next year, we had two cornerback positions to really solidify, with the cornerback number 2 in the slot position, because I just didn't see it on the team this year in training camp. But I think we only have one to worry about. I think I'd like to upgrade from Philip Gaines, and I think that's going to be something. I trust this regime to find a cornerback number 2 somewhere in the draft or somewhere in free agency that's going to be a better, an upgrade from Gaines. So very happy.
I actually think Philip Gaines is a fine cornerback 4. Like, I'm okay with him being on the roster. He's at a reasonable contract. I actually think he's under contract next year, just above the veteran minimum. So he's the kind of guy that I'm cool being on the team. I just don't want him to be a major part of what we're doing. I want him to be there as depth. And I know a lot of the guys in the chat have been talking about all the dead cap and stuff like that. That's going to be the big piece for us next year, is having all of those $3 to $7 million players that we can now add as legitimate depth. What the biggest thing that people underestimate is almost every NFL roster has a handful of contracts that you kind of wish you could have back, but you're just riding it out because it's better than releasing them. We've gotten rid of almost all of them. Our last one is next year with Charles Clay. Beyond that, every single other guy under contract, I'm good with the number they're under contract at. So it's nice to finally be in that spot where we can now use 10 draft picks and $90 million in cap space to just go out there and fill in spots. And, I kind of hope there's a big splash or two. Maybe we go out and throw big money at Darrell Williams at right tackle from Carolina, Golden Tate, and we spend, maybe $30 million on those two. I'm okay with that, because then there's going to be 10 more guys that get added at $3 million, $4 million, $5 million, $6 million. And we're going to rebuild the depth that we don't have right now in a couple spots. We've been very fortunate from an injury standpoint. And, if we lost a couple of players, I think you saw tonight with Julian Stanford having to come in, our defense could go from world-class top 10 to very average very quickly if we lost the wrong combination of a couple people.
Yeah, you don't want Lafayette Pitts out there playing a lot of cornerback. So I totally agree with you. And then you throw in the 10 draft picks, and this regime has proven to me, at least, that they can hit at least 50%, 60% of the draft picks. So if you can get 5 or 6 guys that are your Taron Johnsons, your Matt Milano type of guys, and that doesn't even account for it. This is the thing that I talk with Bills fans that are so upset about the process and all these things. Those draft successes we just said it early in this episode. Zay Jones is just kind of coming into that where, all right, this guy's not a bust and maybe he could be a success. Some of them take time. Wyatt Teller, we have no idea who Wyatt Teller is and what he can develop into. If he can develop into a starting NFL guard, again, that's a huge win. There's a couple of guys on this roster that, they might take a year or two to develop, but they were a draft pick and you have your contract control on them and you're going to have another chance to get 10 more of those guys going into next year. So I'm totally happy with the contract control that this team has. And ESPN put up a stat, even though their graphics were terrible all night and they were the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
So I love Tyrod going over, and then whatever this was is AJ McCarron goes over the falls. Whoever's idea that was to throw quarterbacks over Niagara Falls was hysterical.
I think my high school AV club had better graphics than Monday Night Football does for ESPN. I don't know what's going on over there, but one of the things I like that they did point out was I've gotten yelled at for saying this a lot because I said, this is a young team. And people say, well, they got old players. This is one of the oldest rosters. And they pointed out 40% of the roster is in the first year or two of this team. And Bean kind of talked about that in this pregame thing is we are getting a lot of these guys more playing time than other teams would because of the position they're in. So you got all these guys that are 40% of your rosters in year 1 or 2, you have this contract control and they're getting experience. I think it's a great position to be in, even though the record wouldn't state that, or the performance we're seeing on Sundays doesn't show that that's a good position to be in. Am I losing my mind?
No. It's just such a tough spot to be in. We got to just wait and kind of ride it out.
Yeah, totally. So let's give last thing I want to talk about because he's your boy, and I'm gonna bring it up today because you've been riding a wave of fantastic success with your guy here, and he had a chance to go up against the team we stole from him, and your boy Bjork has had a rough night, man.
It was terrible. And I will say he redeemed himself a little bit later. He pinned 2 inside the 20 late, including the one that they put inside the 5. But his first 3 punts were literally his worst 3 punts since he's joined the team. He launched one way into the end zone. His second one bounced very aggressively. It wasn't good hang time, so it was bouncing directly forward and rocketed through the end zone. His third punt was the crazy one, and it's not fully on him. I think it almost got blocked, so he kind of had to adjust and then still try to get it off and went for 23 yards. So those 3 punts were his 3 worst of the season. He hadn't had 2 go into the end zone for touchbacks in a game all year, and he did it on back-to-back punts to open the game and then had a terrible punt on the third one. So he was in terrible shape, got himself into that spot. He did bounce back a little bit. His fourth and his fifth one were both inside the 20 and were reasonable. One was 53 yards inside the 20. The other one was the one that they pinned, I think, at like the 8 or the 9, and then they got the half the distance of the goal because Julian Edelman's a cheater like the rest of the Patriots. So he at least came back a little bit. But, this was a rough game, and he started out absolutely terrible.
Yeah, he did, and you just can't afford to do that against a team like the Patriots. Really, anybody. Special teams hasn't been good, man. I hate to be one of those guys, but there's something broken in this Bills special teams, whether it's the pre-snap penalties we saw for weeks. We saw a couple penalties. Marcus Murphy almost had the fumble, but then he came out, had a really nice run, and that was half the distance to the goal. It was like a 25-yard loss for a penalty on special teams. It's just, Eric Wood had mentioned that in one of his tweets, saying how frustrating that is to the offense when you have a decent return or a good field position, you end up half the distance to the goal, and you're just marching back to start a drive. It kills drives, man, right from the get-go. And I don't know what it is about the Bills special teams. I don't know if it is Crossman and coaching or not, but something's not right over there with discipline on that unit, and it's really starting to affect an already inept offense.
I will say, we had our 2 best returns of the season tonight. Our first legitimate punt return, Micah Hyde, I swear that's the first time it hasn't been just a fair catch, that he brought one back, which I don't love, having one of our most valuable defensive players returning punts, but he looked great, and that was critical in that spot. And then Marcus Murphy actually had a nice 37-yard kick return, and like you said, it gets called back on yet again another special teams penalty. So I am very much ready for the Danny Crossman show to be over and to bring in some. I would hope that Dable being in New England for 7 years, there's some sharp up and coming guy he can steal from New England to come be the new special teams coordinator. Either that or Danny Crossman has, incriminating photos of Kim Pagula or something. I don't know how the man maintains his job like he does.
Yeah, he's got something over there. We'll wrap this up here tonight. I want to know, what are you looking for here in the next 16 hours? It's probably a little less than 16 hours at this point now. Do you, in your real, when you really think about this, do you think the Bills are big time players here in the next 16 hours of the trade deadline?
All right. Big time player, I don't think is the term I would use. It sounds like there's a list of players out there. I think there's a bit of a bidding war on Demaryius Thomas. It was reported by Ian Rappaport that I think it's Houston and New England both going after Demaryius Thomas. If we can get New England to win that, I don't see us trading Kelvin Benjamin to the Patriots. It's just not, I don't see being trading with the Patriots. So if the Patriots trade for Demaryius, maybe Houston is still desperate and willing to give us something for Kelvin Benjamin. I think trading LaShawn McCoy is unrealistic. I think that Bean has a relatively high price tag on him for a reason. The one scenario I can see is him going back to Philadelphia. I think it's a good story. They can sell the locker room. If we can get Philadelphia to give us their 4th round pick, I think we can make something happen. If I've also heard a couple scenarios where Kelvin Benjamin could get moved for a conditional 2020 pick, where it's a 6th rounder if he walks away from the team at the end of the year, but if the team re-signs him, we get a 4th rounder. That's something that I would sign up for, and I think is reasonable to be able to go after. I don't think anyone else. If Brandon Beane gets something for Charles Clay, the man is a magician. I don't think we're going to move Jerry Hughes. And honestly, I don't know that we have any other real tradable asset. Anyone who would be worthwhile, who is a veteran on a 1-year deal, is a guy we're not going to trade. They're not going to trade Lorenzo Alexander. They're not going to trade Kyle Williams. Nobody wants Vlad Dukas. Nobody wants Jordan Mills. So any of the guys in that window of 1-year deal, veteran, not a ton of cap hit, are guys that either nobody wants or we're not going to trade. So realistically, it's Kelvin Benjamin or LaShawn McCoy, or a really awesome value for Jerry Hughes. They better get a great pick for him if they do. And then I think there's a low probability that we could go and trade for a player. I don't think that's likely, but if they already had an extension on the table and wanted to trade for a Golden Tate, if they wanted to get into the Demaryius Thomas sweepstakes, guys that we're looking for to be on the team for next year. Again, I don't expect that, but it's a possibility. In the chat, Nicholas brought up Shaq Lawson. He's cheap rotational play, and he's actually been playing reasonably
he played pretty well tonight.
He's just, his contract isn't something we need to get out of. He's still on his rookie deal. So again, if they get a good value for him, I'm not mad, but guys who are contributing on rookie contracts just should not be a priority to be traded. That's how the Cleveland Browns got into a lot of their situation. You need cheap labor in the NFL, and Shaq counts as that. He's not a 1st round pick like we were hoped, but he's a good rotational defensive end who we could do worse. So again, if they get good, everybody has a price. If they get decent value for it, I'm okay with it, but he's not a priority to move for me.
No, and as far as living up to his draft value too, he wasn't a draft pick of this regime, so they don't put the value on him of that draft pick. He's just another guy that was here when they got here, and if he's producing, like you said, for the cheap, there's no reason to part with him unless you're blown away. I don't know that there's a team out there that would put something together to blow you away for Shaq Lawson. He's not that player.
Is Rex Ryan in a front office somewhere? If Rex Ryan got a job in a front office somewhere, we could talk.
Yeah, sure. But I've actually been happy with Shaqy. He's a guy that we don't talk about a lot on this, but he's done pretty well. He had some pressures tonight. I have no problems with Shaq being on this team going forward. Like you said, as a rotational guy, Bean and McDermott have stated multiple times, if they could have 10 11 guys that were just rotational defensive linemen, they would do it every time. They love fresh linemen.
Well, and obviously, I mean, the Eagles won a Super Bowl with it last year, doing that. And I think that, we showed a national audience today that our defense is legitimate majorly because of that. Granted, I know we had that window in the second and third quarter where we didn't get to Brady, but early on we hit him multiple times. Kyle Williams crushed him. Brady was dumb and tried to step up into a block and got absolutely crumpled by Lorenzo Alexander. We were getting pressure on him. We had a couple awesome stunts, one really good defensive tackle stunt in the fourth quarter that caused pressure. But, we caused a lot of the New England Patriots are the best third down team in the NFL. We got them to go 5 of 14 on the game. They didn't convert a single fourth down. We got 5 of 14 from them. That's a great game and something that we should be very proud of. And that's from that defensive line rotation. That is here to stay. We are going to see continued investment in that defensive line moving forward.
Absolutely. Well, we'll wrap this up here tonight. Greg, for people that don't know you, I know you were active over there in the chat. Where can our lovely followers find you and interact with you outside of YouTube?
Please come find me on Twitter. I am at Greg Thompson, GregTompsett. I'd love to follow back. Bills fans have a lot of good interaction. We've actually had a lot of really good crossover interviews lately. Got to work with Evan Lazar and who's a host of the All 22 podcast there in New England. Got to work with Mark, who's awesome. Mark Schofield is fantastic, works for a lot of different areas talking about the Patriots. Got 2 more lined up for this week for the Bears. I'm going to be a guest on a Bears podcast tomorrow, and then we're going to have a couple guys from Barroom Bears over onto our podcast on Wednesday night. So a lot of good interaction. Really love being able to go back and forth with fans. So anybody who wants to come give me a follow, I love to follow back, and we'll have a good time.
He is a good time. That's why I brought him on. He's a great time. I'm bummed I'm going to miss the Bears Barroom one. Those guys are all my buddies over there. I have a ton of Bears followers for some reason. My brother's a big Bears fan. He's coming up for the game here this week, and he works with the Barroom guys. He does part of their pregame show. So it's a big week here in the Quinn family of trash talk, and I don't think I'm going to have a lot of trash talking to do come Sunday, but it's still going to be a fun week. So I'll definitely be tuning in probably to the live, but I'm going to miss that show. But if you like me as well, you can find me over at Aaron Quinn 716. I am just, I'm always doing the podcast whenever I can get to it nowadays. And I'm always there with Cover One and on Twitter, interacting, making crazy claims, and defending the process. So if you want a guy that's out there saying, wait a minute, calm down, let's see how this thing plays out, I'm your guy, because I'm ready. I'm ready to see how it plays out. We're halfway through this mess. We only got another half of a season to go. It could get much worse, but who cares at this point?
Well, and honestly, if we're being honest with ourselves, I'm okay with these games the rest of the season. If you give me 8 more games where the Bills are really competitive for 3 quarters, play well, and then a couple of things fall apart and we lose, but it locks us up like a top 3 pick, I'm honestly okay with that. That we know this offense isn't going to be awesome. So if we get in a situation where, the defense keeps showing promise, we see more development out of Zay Jones, we see more promising things. Obviously, our number one priority is Josh Allen. But if we get some good plays and then, hey, we just barely don't pull it out at the end, I'm probably okay with that in the long run, as long as we're seeing this positive development. So
yes.
If that's what it is, sign me up.
And I want to see how many more times Sean McDermott can say, let's go look at the tape, before Twitter's collective mind just explodes all over my screen. I can't wait to see it. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us on this late Monday Night Football edition of the show. We look forward to, like Greg said, we'll have the Bears preview and the Bears post-game show this week, so tune in. If you haven't already done it while you're over here on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Click that little bell. It'll notify you whenever we go live. If there's breaking news or something, somebody's going to try to get on here and give you some type of emergency pod at some point. So subscribe to us, like us. And like Greg said, go over and check out cover1.net. Check out the premium memberships. it's really one of the best deals. I know the Bills aren't great right now. People are down on them, but if you're a diehard Bills fan, there really is no better, people analyzing the game than Eric Turner and the team at cover1.net. You'll get the best stuff that you can get out there. So head over to cover1.net, check it out. There'll be a ton of stuff coming post game from Eric. I bet Eric's ripping film right now while we're podcasting over here. So you can expect that type of content from us. Guys, just enjoy the process. That's all I can say. And we'll catch you next week. Thanks for coming.